Welcome back to Animation Teacher. Now, this is a brand new semester for the first year uh, animation course. Now, today in class, I covered essentially the user interface of Harmony 14. Now, for today, I'm actually going to open up our brand new Harmony 15.0 Premium version. Now, for those of you who followed in class, what I'll do is I'm going to cover all the features that we covered in class. It's going to be the exact same layout as we saw in Harmony 14. So the interface should look very similar. There are some new buttons that we do have in this new version, but that's fine. We're going to basically set up something new for our purposes. So I'm going to set up a new folder. We're going to call it Winter 2018, and this is going to be our project folder. The project itself, we're going to go, let's say class B underscore last name, first name, hyphen week 1. We'll create a scene. And here is our interface. So this basically should look like what you guys have it. So I'm gonna switch our workspace into an animating workspace. Okay, and if you do the same thing in Harmony 14, you should basically get essentially the exact same view that you see here. There are a few new buttons in Harmony 15, primarily this button here, Show Manipulator, as well as this transform tools option called Control Selection Mode. But aside from those two, there aren't too many different changes with respects to what you see on the user interface. So when you start a project, the first thing you want to do, even though you created a project, is you want to hit save. What that's going to do is it's going to create essentially your project folder. Now I'm going to show you what the project folder looks like. I'm just going to pull it up here on my second window. Hang on one sec. Okay, so this is what the project folder looks like. Our file name, we go inside, and inside we have an elements, environments, frames, jobs, palette library, as well as the main auxiliary, palette list, and scene elements, scene version tables. Now the main thing that we need to execute this entire project folder is something called an X stage. So if you double click this, you will launch the scene. That being said, it's only 8 kilobytes. So you actually need to submit this entire folder. So when we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to right click, send to compressed, and when you submit your folders or your project, all I need is the zipped folder. Okay, I'll just delete that for now. Now, to go over the interface once again, this is our timeline, our current frame, the start frame of where the animation begins, the stop frame where the animation ends. This is our frames per second, currently set at 24 frames per second. Down here we have our camera view. This is basically what you see when you render things out. Currently we have nothing. Over here on the left we have our tool property, or our tools. On our right here we have our tool properties. They coincide with one another. For example, if we decide to use the ellipse tool and I click on an empty spot on our timeline, and I draw an ellipse or a circle, you can see with my shape selection tool, this tool properties appears, which allows me to draw either bigger circles or thicker line circles or thinner line circles, like such. You can also control the thickness, the taper, as well as include textures to it as well. So just play around with those options there. Now over here in this section we have our library. Currently you're seeing the drawing substitution or drawing instance of this drawing symbol. And this drawing symbol is essentially what's being shown here on our timeline. The next part of this will be our drawing node view, our node view. In our node view, the drawing is represented with this light blue box, and you can rename the drawing anything you'd like. So in this case, we'll put ball, and we'll close that. So here is our ball, and here is the first drawing of our ball substitution. Now if you scroll along the timeline, it disappears. If you want to expose the ball, you simply go to the end and hit F5 to expose the entire drawing. Alright, so let's quickly go over the tools. This here is the selection tool. You can basically highlight and it's going to select the object. In this case, we're selecting line art. And when it's orange, when it's an orange box like this, you can change the artwork of the drawing. Next, you have the, the cutter. If you hold down the select arrow, you can go down to the cutter. The cutter basically is a lasso and erase kind of tool. You basically cut into what you want and just delete it. The contour editor tool works a little bit different than the black arrow select tool in that you can move various points of your artwork. I'm just going to hit undo, Control Z. You can also introduce points by holding Control. This is on a PC. And while you hold Alt, you can actually play with your Bezier. If you want to straighten out your line, simply hold down Alt and click, and it's going to create a nice sharp angle. I'm just going to undo all of that. The next one is our brush tool. So I'm going to draw you a circle, or attempt to draw a circle here with the brush. Let's try that again. Okay, so here's a circle with the brush tool. You can control the thick and thin as usual and the smoothing. So this is what the circle looks like without smoothing, and I'll draw a circle again with 100% smoothing. It basically makes the circle more round. Alright, but usually you don't use 100% smoothing. Maybe like 8 or 20. That should do it. The pencil tool. Now the pencil tool is similar in the sense that you can create thicker lines or thinner lines, and you can also control smoothing. Now here is the primary difference between a line tool and a brush tool. The line tool, you'll see that when I select it, there's an orange line in the middle here. That indicates where you actually manipulate your lines. Whereas the fill, or the brush tool, when I try to manipulate the lines, it simply does that. So there are advantages and disadvantages to this. Now, the other part of it is if you decide to fill, I'm just going to skip this text tool because it's pointless, and the eraser tool is basically a simple eraser which you can control the line thickness. So we're going to go to our paint bucket tool here. So I'm going to paint bucket this circle and this circle. Now you'll notice that this red basically fills right until the edge of this line, whereas when I click this red, it actually fills right up until this point here. Now I'm gonna create a broader illustration to show you what I mean. If I increase this size here, I'm gonna delete the fill and I'll fill it again using red. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to fill this little circle here. Oops, sorry, with red. I think there is actually, okay, let's clean this up a little bit. Okay, cross the lines here. Now, there's this cut in the middle there. You can just round off the edges just to smooth that out and close it off. Okay, you know what? I'm going to draw a heart here. So I'm using a combination right now of Alt and dragging my Bezier curves, as well as holding Alt to just do the one side at a time. Okay, so here is the heart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this heart now with red, and I'm going to copy it. So Control C, Control V, and now I have two identical hearts. On the heart on the left, I'm going to create a fill. So I'm going to convert from pencil to brush in my tool properties panel after I've selected it with the black arrow tool. I'm going to deselect and then I'll reselect it again, but this time I'm going to hit this button here to merge down the drawings, to flatten the layers. Now here is again what the brush fill looks like and the line fill. Now it still looks the same, but here is the elemental difference. If I pull this heart away, as you can see, the red fills up to the outside of the black line, whereas this red fills into the center of the black line. So it's completely different. Okay. So this here is the line, rectangle, ellipse, or polygon. So ellipse, rectangle are basically the same. Line is pretty straightforward. Now the polygon, if you haven't used Illustrator before, the polygon line works like this. You basically click, drag, and control the Bezier as you draw. Click and drag, click and drag. When you reach the end, you basically just click that box and it fills it in. So you get a nice, clean, closed line. So that's a polyline. The next one is the eyedropper. So the eyedropper is quite simple. You click on a color and it goes to the designated color swatch. This tool here is called the drawing pivot, which we don't really use and we're not going to use for our purposes in animation. And this here is the morphing tool, which we're also not going to use because it doesn't quite work the way we want it. We'll be using envelope deformers at a later date, and they work much better. So we generally don't use this or this tool. And we don't use this tool. This is the hand tool. This is to pan around on your view. But you don't really need that. So as long as you are on this transform tool, or any other tool for that matter, as long as you hold down the space bar, you can pan around without actually clicking the hand. This little guy here, he's called the Animate, or she, I don't know what gender this is, but this is the Animate button, and essentially all that does is it needs to be noted that it should be pressed down whenever you move an object. When you deselect that object and you move it along the timeline, it basically moves the entire composition. So imagine, if you will, you have a run cycle, on the spot run cycle, and you decided to move it from here all the way over to here, just for composition. That's basically the time you would make sure that it is set to off, because if you have it set to on, it then creates a keyframe, and you will have some of your run cycles here and some of your run cycle here. So depending on what you need and want, you toggle it on and off. Now the next one is the transform tool. This tool basically does everything: repositions, scale, rotates, and even skews. So you can basically do stuff like this. The one at the bottom is inverse kinematics. We're not rigging anything, so we're not going to touch that yet. And even when we do, there are other tools and features now that we don't tend to use that anymore. This is the onion skin. The onion skin is pretty straightforward. You essentially draw something on one frame and draw something else on another, and you can see a ghosting of whatever it is that you highlight within these brackets here. So those are the basic tools. Next up, I'm going to show you guys symbols, drawing symbols, composites, write modules, and display. So this here is the node view. Inside the node view, whenever you start up any project, you're going to get a drawing, symbol I call them. You're going to get a composite, a write module, and a display. For the write module, this essentially tells you where your frames are going to end up. So as a default, it ends up inside your project folder. Remember this? It ends up in here. If you decide to export frames, or wherever you want to export your movies or PNGs, or QuickTime, just there. Your display is essentially whatever is connected to display gets shown. So for example, if you're working on a project where you have, let's say, a bunch of balls, and for some reason these balls are full of special effects and you can't see anything because it's not playing back properly because it's too heavy. In this case, obviously it's going to play because it's very low graphic. But suppose it's super heavy. What you can do is you can use this display to show what's going on your camera, and it'll speed things up. So if you only want to show ball number 3, for example, you would drag the bottom here and place it on top of the display. And up here you can toggle display all or display. So if I hit display all, you're going to see all the balls connected to the composite. If I go to display, just display, which is what this is called, you're only going to see the one. So that's what display does. Now the composite is basically a container for all of these drawing symbols. Whatever is connected to this will be affected by whatever comes after. So in this case, because we want all these balls to be contained inside this composite so we can show the display, we simply connect them all and ensure that whatever the display is connected to, all of these are affected because of the composite. So if I wanted to add a blur effect, for example, on all the balls, I can either put a blur display here, blur here, blur here, blur here, blur here, and blur here. Or I can simply attach the blur after the composite. So that's what that does. I'm going to get rid of everything. And next I'm going to show you drawings and instances. So right now we have our drawing substitution. We have two drawings, which you erase. So the first drawing, let's draw something new. We're going to draw an arrow. So the first arrow I'm going to draw basically looks like that, and I'll fill it. The second drawing of the arrow, I'm going to do a little bit of a curve, and I'll fill that. Oops, sorry, that was actually the paintbrush tool. Let me use the pencil tool. And we'll fill that. Okay. So my drawing number 2 and my drawing number 1. I have two drawing instances. Now, if you want to do a third drawing, you can either hit Alt-Shift-D, select this, and Alt-Shift-D. That's going to give you a new drawing substitution. Or you can hit Drawing, Create Empty Drawing, or Duplicate Drawing. So in my case, I actually duplicated drawing number 3 and drawing number 1. Okay? So I'm going to undo that to show you what that looks like again. So I undid it 3 times, and now I only have 2 drawing substitutions. And if I want a third one, you can go Drawing, Insert, or sorry, Duplicate Drawing, or Create Empty Drawing. If I create Empty Drawing, Alt-Shift-R, I get number 3. Okay, so now instance number 3 is created, but there's nothing on there, which is fine, because our third drawing, we're going to do a squiggly arrow, and we'll fill that. So now we have our up arrow, our circle arrow, and our squiggly arrow. If at some point you want to toggle between the 3 drawings within the same frame, what you simply do is highlight it and press the brackets next to the P button, left and right, and you can toggle between the 3 drawing substitutions. So those are drawing substitutions of this one ball drawing symbol. So in a drawing symbol, you can have a bunch of drawing substitutions. Now, to take it a step further, each drawing substitution will have a drawing layer. So if you just right click and go to Art Layer, you're going to see a display for an overlay, line art, color, and underlay. Now if you don't have that, what you're going to have to do is go under Settings, Edit Preferences. Under the Preferences, you're going to go under General and ensure all these are set. So I'm actually going to take a screen capture of this for you guys. And what I'm going to highlight here that you should be mindful of to keep on is focus on mouse enter. You want to make sure stop motion frames are set to on, and actually you want this to be on as well. I'm going to let's redo that again. I'm going to turn that on first, and then I'll capture it again. Let's try that again. Okay, so you're going to want this turned on, focus on mouse enter. You're going to want your default separate position for pegs, and you'll want your stop motion keyframes. Your levels of undo, I like to keep it about 300. That seems to be like a sweet spot number. Okay, so I'm going to save this for the General tab. Actually, let's use a different color there. Sure. Oh, let's make that a lot thicker. Customize. Okay, so under the General tab. So let's save this under preference notes 01. And then the next one, we're going to go under advance, and we'll take another one. Here. So under advance, we're going to want to support overlay underlay arts and make sure that's turned on. Okay, so that's basically what you need for now. There are other features that we can turn on, but we'll just use those for now. So the next thing I'm going to do is pull up my drawing window. So all you have to do is hit this plus sign and go under drawing, and I'll turn on my grid here. So I don't see anything, and it's because I'm on the underlay layer. If you click, oh, there it is, on the line art layer, that's basically where I have my drawings. You can also see all the layers by clicking this eye tool. So for example, if I was to create something to complement my squiggly arrow, for example, let's say a blue kind of bracket for no apparent reason, you can actually show that alongside the arrow. And using the select tool, you can actually highlight just the blue by having this color art layer selected. If you have the line art layer selected, you're going to select the red. So in this case, I just want the color art selected. So I'll select the blue. And I'll just put it like that for now. I just want to show you something here. So I have my color art layer on the color art. I have my line art layer. Sorry, I have the blue bracket on the color art layer, and I have my squiggly arrow on line art layer. If I go under the camera mode, you're going to see them both. But we know that within this drawing symbol called the ball, we have on our third drawing substitution 2 layers of art that's created. Now, you're probably wondering when you would actually ever use this, but I'm going to create another drawing that will illustrate that a little bit better. Let's create a new drawing. To create a new drawing, you hit Control R, and you can add a new drawing layer in the node view. So I'm going to call this hand. Add and close. I'm going to connect this hand to the composite. Okay, let's turn off that grid, and I'm just going to draw a hand. It's not going to be too pretty, but you'll get the picture of this hand. Okay, so here's my hand. Now there's a blue outline there. All you have to hit is K to get rid of the blue outline if you find it annoying. Alright, I'll just fill this with blue for now. Now, suppose, oh, that's a terrible blue. Let me find something a little bit more appealing here. Okay, so let's suppose you have a hand, and you wanted to set it up so you can put something in between the hand. What you can do is select the drawing itself, Control C, and place it on the overlay layer. So now you have it on the color art layer and the overlay art layer. Next, you're going to take the cutter, and you're going to basically cut what's not the overlay. So in this case, everything beyond these points. Now obviously you can make this a lot cleaner than I just did here, but the idea is that you'll have now an overlay and the entire hand, in which you can then place this hand. Let's get rid of this arrow here for a second. That's in the line art layer. Let's suppose you wanted this hand to hold this ball. It's this bracket in the ball symbol. What you can do is in this hand symbol, you're going to click the yellow box, and under drawing, you're going to just expose the color art. You're going to copy Control C and Control V and paste the hand again, and you're going to put it in front of the ball. The hierarchy works like this. Whatever is to the left of the object will be, and connected in the composite, will be prioritized above that object to the right of it. You can basically move it like this, but because the hand is still to the left of the ball symbol on the composite, it's still going to be on top of it in the camera view. So it doesn't matter where you move it, as long as it's connected properly here, you're going to get the proper display. Now in this hand, I'm going to go in the properties, and I'm only going to use the overlay art for this. And look what happens when I do that. The hand, the exact same hand, is now holding that blue line. So that's the advantage of having all these layers here. So to recap, every drawing symbol has drawing substitutions, and each drawing substitution, for example this hand, will have different layers of art. Okay, now you don't move the art. So when you're animating, you don't just move this art and then you move this art. What you're going to do instead is you're going to introduce what's called pegs. So to create a peg, you're going to select the art, the drawing symbol, and hit Control P. And you can do the same over here and hit Control P. And for this symbol here, you hit Control P. Now, you can move it, but it's still moving individually. So what you want to do is ensure that this hand and this hand is controlled by a master peg. So you highlight the two pegs and you hit Control P. Now, when you move the hand, you can move the overlay hand and the underlay hand. But that's not all. You still want to move this piece here. So then you're going to connect the ball symbol with it as well. So now you move the whole thing. Okay. Sorry, it's confusing. I call it the ball because we're supposed to do the ball assignment. So why don't we do that next? So I'm going to delete my hands, delete everything here, delete. Okay, now the ball still maintains all the variety of ball instances, in this case arrow instances, but we can get rid of this entire thing and start all over. However, I want to show you something before I do that. If I delete everything on the timeline, this ball still exists because I can pull it back at any time. So on frame 30, for example, if I want to show drawing number 1, I simply go to drawing number 1. And if I want to show it for 10 frames, I'll go to drawing 40 and hit F5 to expose the drawing. So it will appear for 10 frames. If I want to go back to frame 10 and show drawing number 2, I can do that as well. and then I can extend that to frame 28 by hitting F5. Okay, so the idea is that if you delete anything here, it's not going to actually delete your drawing symbol. It's only going to delete the exposure that we see on the camera. If you want to delete everything, you basically just highlight in the node view and hit delete. So it's gone. Alright, so I'm gonna basically stop the video here, and that's essentially the rundown of all the tools that we went over. On the next setup, on the next video, I'm going to show you how to quickly rig a ball and animate it, a ball and tail, for our first assignment. Okay, thanks for watching.